In this episode of The Frieze, it sounds like Aaron Boone is coming back, but according to Michael K., a slew of coaches and players may not be. Next, I will finish my hypothetical offseason of rebuilding the Yankees, and we'll talk about the catcher position, why it's time to move on from Gary Sanchez. We'll also talk about center field, whether or not the Yankees should be able to count on Aaron Hicks. Finally, we'll talk about who should be on the bench and who should be in the bullpen. Stick around, I'm Derek of NYY Recaps. This is The Frieze. So according to Michael K. on his show, sounds like Aaron Boone is going to be back in 2022. He says that Boone will be back, but that several coaches and players will not be. And I trust Michael K.'s bona fides. I mean, this guy has been around the Yankees organization for 3 decades now. You got to think he has at least some contacts that know what they're saying. Although, he also had contacts that said Judge was going to be named MVP in 2017. So let's take it with a grain of salt. But given the fact that they have not announced any moves with Aaron Boone yet, he is a free agent. His contract is up. I'd imagine they're approaching him about coming back, and they're probably in negotiations right now. It'll say a lot to me if it's a 1-year deal. That would say to me that there's not a lot of confidence in Aaron Boone, so it'll be interesting to see if they give him a multi-year contract. He'll probably get a 2-year deal if he's coming back. Hal Steinbrenner publicly put the blame on the players this summer, and he's not 100% wrong. I mean, a lot of the players had down years. DJ LeMahieu, Gleyber Torres, Aaron Hicks. A lot of these guys just had bad years. But who's responsible for counting on a team full of right-handed home run hitters? Who's responsible for putting that together in a stadium that's built for lefties? That's fruit from the poisonous tree. This roster was not set up to succeed. It's malpractice to put a stacked right-handed lineup in a stadium that's built for lefties. Of course they performed badly, because you made it too easy for managers to manage against them and too easy for pitchers to get into a good rhythm against them. The Gallo and Rizzo acquisitions were attempts to correct on the fly, but what this team seems to neglect year after year is that the time to build a winner is in the offseason. The time to build your roster is now. Don't wait until January or February and see whose price has come down the lowest. You're the Yankees. Don't wait until July 25th and see which guys at the tail end of contracts you can get picked up for pennies on the dollar. The time to start constructing your roster is right now. The world is your oyster, Brian Cashman, if you're still going to be the GM. There's a lot of different ways you can go, but you've got to start now. You've got to be aggressive. All right, so in case you didn't watch part 1 and you skipped directly to part 2, here's just a quick recap. I traded Joey Gallo and a package of prospects to be named later, not sure who they would want, to the Oakland A's for Matt Olson. Matt Olson is a powerful left-handed hitter. I think he would do a fantastic job at first base. Rizzo was solid, but he's going to cost a lot more money than Olson would, and he's in his 30s, and plus, I don't want solid. I want as close to perfect as I can get, and Matt Olson is a perfect fit. My next move was to sign Marcus Semien for shortstop. He can play shortstop for 1 year and then shift off to either second base or third base, depending on how you construct your roster. He's durable, he's got power, and I mentioned that it was a force multiplier acquisition. It helps you, and it hurts the Blue Jays, one of your premier division rivals. Can't tell you how many times Semien beat the Yankees this year. And finally, I signed Carlos Rodon to plug him into the rotation. I think having a top-of-the-rotation lefty to go along with Garrett Cole is fantastic. I posted my rotation. You guys saw that it did not include Nestor Cortez. I think Nestor Cortez needs to slide back into the position that he was in this year, where he begins the season kind of as a relief pitcher and a swingman, and then he fills in when somebody goes down. He is the perfect guy to fill in, but as you saw towards the end of the season, he was having trouble going more than like 4 innings before he would get tired. So I don't want to stretch him out over 200 innings. I'd rather limit him to about 100 innings or so. That means start the season in the bullpen, working middle relief, and then when somebody goes down with a tight hamstring or a sore forearm or whatever, he can hop in and make a few starts. Now, by signing Marcus Semien, that means DJ LeMahieu is kind of out of a job unless you move Gio Urshela or Gleyber Torres, which is what I'm about to do. In this episode, I am trading Gleyber Torres, unfortunately. Look, I thought a lot about keeping him. I like Gleyber Torres. And if you are advocating for Gleyber Torres in the comments, I totally respect you, and I think that Gleyber Torres has a ton of potential to be a good player someday. He's been a good player in the past. He's been a great power hitter. But the last 2 years, he has not been good enough defensively, and he hasn't hit for much power, and he's not really hitting for a high average, and he's kind of slow for somebody who's in his mid-20s. And I have a little bit of a problem with his hustle sometimes. I want guys who bust it every time. Plus, it took him way too long to make adjustments this year. I just don't know if New York is the place where Gleyber Torres is going to get it done. I am trading Gleyber Torres to the Kansas City Royals, word to Patrick Hennessy, where he can settle in as their second baseman, and in the spacious gaps, he should be able to bring his average up. He hits a lot of bloopers, a lot of flares, because he's got a very unconventional approach at the plate. If you play him too much towards the gaps, he's going to find a lot of bloopers down the line. If you shift him towards the line, he's going to find the gaps. It's kind of a big park, so I don't think his power is going to go up, but his average may go up if he's playing out there in Kansas City. As far as power goes, I think we got enough guys who swing from the heels. I want a few more line drives on this roster. I'm trading him in a package for Andrew Benintendi. Andrew Benintendi is going to be your new left fielder. I'm going to try and get them to throw in left-handed relief pitcher Jake Brentz, too. He's a rookie last year. He struck out 76 hitters in 64 innings. He had a bit too many walks, but I'm confident that Matt Blake can fix him. This move allows me to move DJ LeMahieu back over to second base. The thing I was forced to decide here is between Gio Urshela, Gleyber Torres, or DJ LeMahieu, who's the odd man out. And because the Yankees have had so many issues on defense, and I'm tired of watching them give away runs, I want to keep Gio Urshela at third base. And I think that DJ LeMahieu is probably a better second baseman than Gleyber Torres. He doesn't have the range he used to, but he's still really good. He's got really good hands. He positions himself very well. And I think he's going to have a better year offensively if you shift him back to second base and let him settle in and get comfortable. Gleyber Torres at this point becomes a little bit redundant. He can't play shortstop, you know that. And at second base, he's going to be behind DJ LeMahieu. So instead of just letting him sit on the bench, I'm moving him for another asset. I'm getting Andrew Benintendi. We'll get back to building the ideal Yankees team in just a minute, but first, I would like to take a moment to introduce the video's sponsor, Masterworks.io. Investing is a lot like building a baseball team. It requires a ton of research and can be stressful as hell. Did you realize that only 3% of day traders actually turn a profit? Every equity research firm, from Goldman to Citi, is slashing long-term projections. Morningstar is even projecting negative growth. What does that mean? I don't know. They paid me to say it, but if you know what it means, you're the person this ad is for, so listen up. Finding promising investments is harder than winning the World Series without a good pitching staff. Thankfully, there is one asset you can bank on to grow your wealth. It's not gold or real estate. It has nothing to do with crypto. It's contemporary art. Why invest in some kind of weird internet money when you can invest in one-of-a-kind masterpiece art? There's a reason why super wealthy individuals like Steve Cohen invest more than $1 billion in contemporary art. But unless you've got tens of millions of dollars laying around, it's really hard to invest in art. Until now, thanks to Masterworks. It's the first and only company to let you invest in multi-million-dollar works by Banksy, Andy Warhol, and more. Now you can purchase shares of multi-million-dollar paintings by these legendary artists like buying shares of a company. It's super easy. All you need to do is visit Masterworks.io, create an account, browse their latest paintings, and invest. They've got more than 220,000 members and a long wait list. At the catcher position, I know some of you are going to hate this, but I think it's time to move on from Gary Sanchez. To win in the major leagues, you need to be very strong defensively up the middle. Gary is simply not improving much year over year behind the dish, and he's running out of prime. He's going to start declining soon, given his body type. I know, I'm being a little tough on Gary, but life's hard. Put on a helmet. If I were the GM of the Yankees, the salary relief and the roster space that you would get from simply not tendering Gary Sanchez a contract would make it worth it. I would simply just not tender Gary a contract, let him become a free agent, and be done with it. Then there are two potential catchers that I think the Yankees would target. I'll give them to you in order of preference. The first would have to be done via trade. This guy was actually suggested to me by a commenter, and I did some research into him, and I really like what I see. His name is Jacob Stallings. He's the catcher for the Pittsburgh Pirates. He's a defensive first catcher who had a 3.0 WAR this season. Offensively, he's not going to knock your socks off. He hit .246 with 8 home runs and 53 ribbies. But if you look at his spray chart, he uses the whole field. He draws walks. He had a .335 on-base percentage. He doesn't strike out at an alarming rate. According to Baseball Savant, he's in the 61st percentile of strikeout percentage and the 62nd percentile in whiff percentage. So he'll at least put the bat on the ball. Behind the dish, he had a 2.3 D-WAR and led all catchers with 21 defensive runs saved, despite only playing in 112 games. He's never been a full-time starter in the major leagues, really, until this year, but I think he would be a nice pickup. He's in his 30s. He's a little bit older, but he could hold you over until some of the younger guys are ready. If the Pirates are unwilling to trade him, the Yankees could also go after Yan Gomes. Gomes is a free agent, and he'll be a bit more expensive in price, but won't cost you in prospects, won't cost you in time to negotiate. He had a 2.4 WAR. He hits for a bit more power than Stalling. Defensively, he wasn't quite as good, but still positive, 1.6 D-WAR. He's also tough to strike out. He has a bit more experience, 10 years of experience, and I think experience matters a lot with catcher. If you leave it up to me, I'm going out and I'm getting Jacob Stallings. I think that's the move to make. All right, let's talk about center field. This is going to be a tough one because Aaron Hicks, when he's on the field, can be quite valuable. He's a switch hitter. He can really run the ball down, although this year he didn't look so great out there. Offensively, he has diminished quite a bit. He didn't even walk very much this year, but I don't know how much we can really hold those numbers against him because it was right during the peak of the Spider Tack era. When he was actually on the field, there were no-hitters every night. Nobody in the league was performing offensively. So you wonder how much that extra Spider Tack effect really affected the small sample size of Aaron Hicks this season. There were a few things that concerned me. His throwing arm has diminished significantly since Tommy John surgery. He just was not the same guy throwing the baseball. He looked tentative. And then in the outfield, he just was not as dynamic as he had been in prior seasons. I do think he brings some value as a switch hitter with power, so I'm not getting rid of him. However, he's lost his starting position. And for the sake of the rest of this video, I'm going to assume that the Yankees don't simply eat and release the contract of Aaron Hicks. So we're going to stick him on the bench. I think he's going to be on the team, but I would put him on the bench. Greg Allen. There's simply no way the Yankees are going to go against their philosophy and do this. But the way I would do it, Greg Allen would be my starting center fielder. He hit .326 in AAA this season. He impressed the heck out of me during his brief stints. You don't need everybody on your roster to be a power hitter. That's something that we get caught up in when we're looking at stats or when you're putting together a team. He is a complementary player. He moves runners. He takes the extra base. He's a good defender. He's the type of guy where you throw the stats out the window. He hit .270 in the big leagues, didn't have any power. Looked okay in the minor leagues. He's not a power guy. You have to throw those power expectations out the window and just say, find little ways to win games for us. You might not do it every night. He might have stretches where he's slumping, but his defense is going to be solid, and if he gets on base, he's going to be a problem. He is athletic. Another option is Ketel Marte. I know that a lot of fans want Ketel Marte. He's somebody we talked about last year. He had another pretty good year, but another year in which he had multiple injury issues. And the Yankees have had so many issues with injuries over the past couple of seasons that I really don't want to overpay for a guy in terms of trading prospects when he's just going to get hurt. Greg Allen is my starting center fielder for next year. All right, so that fills out the starting lineup. Here's how I would do the lineup. Marcus Semien leading off at shortstop. Aaron Judge is your right fielder, batting second. Matt Olson batting third at first base. Giancarlo Stanton batting cleanup. He's your primary DH slash left fielder slash right fielder, whatever you need him to play to give guys a day off. But most of the time, you're DH. Benintendi out there in left field. DJ LeMahieu at second base. with Benintendi getting on base in front of him, I think he'll see more fastballs. Greg Allen is my center fielder. Again, switch hitter. You need more lefty bats. This gives us 3 lefties in the lineup on any given day in Olsen, Benintendi, and Allen, who's a switch hitter, by the way, but he can hit left-handed. Urshela at third base with Tyler Wade as the backup. Tyler Wade was great at third base when he had to fill in. He played pretty well for an extended stretch, and he's a left-handed hitter. So if you lose Gio Urshela out of the lineup, at least you have a little bit more balance and speed. So he's, again, a complementary player. And then Jacob Stallings, batting ninth, bringing up the rear at catcher in there for his defense. I think that's a much more well-rounded team. It's not reliant on the home run, but you've got legitimately 4 guys in the lineup who could hit 40 home runs. And depending on how everybody's season works out, you've got 3 or 4 guys who can hit 300 too. Judge can hit 300. Olsen could probably hit 300. Stanton could get close. DJ LeMahieu could hit 300. Urshela hit 300 basically 2 years in a row. Allen, he hit 326 in AAA, so I don't think he's going to hit 300, but he might hit you 285. All right, let's go through my pitching rotation. We already talked about the rotation in the previous episode, and we talked about Nestor Cortez early on in this episode, so I want to go through the pitching staff in the bullpen. The lefties I have, Jake Brentz. He was part of my package from the Royals for Gleyber Torres. He gives you a third lefty to go along with Joely Rodriguez and Wandy Peralta. As far as righties go, you've got 2 sinker ballers, Mike King and Clay Holmes. And then I've got the fireballer, the young righty, Steven Ridings in there. He gives me Dellin Betances vibes. I could really see him being a big asset. Couple of notable omissions, obviously. Chad Green and Aroldis Chapman. They're both off my roster. I think they've been ridden hard and put up wet, especially this season, and they've shown a lot of wear and tear, and I appreciate everything they've done for the Yankees, but there's got to be a team out there that'll give you prospects for one of those guys. Also, you need to unload some salary if you're going to do some shopping, and Aroldis Chapman is an obvious place to do that. The stat heads will tell you that Aroldis Chapman is still very effective as a closer. I'm not going to argue that point. He just doesn't make me feel good when he's on the mound. I'm sorry. I just don't feel good with him out there. I don't trust him. I want him out of here. Chad Green, it's more about him being overused. I feel like he's an injury waiting to happen, just the way that he was used this season. So Jonathan Loaizaga, Johnny Lasagna, is your new closer. He can give you multiple innings if needed. He was lights out for most of this season. He had some hiccups there, but for the most part, I feel like I would trust him in a big spot. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. I've had a ton of fun doing this 2-part series. The channel has really gotten a lot bigger over the last couple of weeks, so I wanted to thank and welcome all of my new subscribers. Go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button and tune in for more content. I'm going to take a few days off, going to see Venom 2 tonight, going to see Halloween Kills tomorrow, and then hopefully this weekend I'll be back with a couple of top 5 lists. So if you have any more ideas for top 5s, drop them in the chat. I'll see you next time.